Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm trying something new. I am actually cleaning out a lot of the back files from the website, and I am putting together a little list of craft tips that I have amassed over the years of conducting this podcast. And so I thought I would share a few of them with you. I also wanted to remind everyone that this summer I have an offer for you. For those who join the yearly paid community on Substack, which is only $50, you can send me a story up to 15 pages for a chance to either be workshopped on the air or anonymously, whatever your choice is. The only other thing I'd love is that if you join, you leave a review on Apple Podcasts, as it would mean a lot to the future of the podcast. Okay, now I'll get to the advice. So today I thought we would peel back the curtain on the creative process. Writing isn't just about putting words on a page, it's also about interrogating your own curiosity. And I was thinking about a recent podcast with Jim Shepard, who talked about the enthusiasm we have when we're kids for different things. And he says that one way he gets into writing is he channels his inner 10-year-old. So you take your own obsession seriously. And he talked about it like being at a cocktail party and someone brings up manatees. And you think, oh, okay, I'll listen to this story on manatees. But the minute the person is done talking about manatees, you forget you ever heard about them. You have no interest at all. But then you go to another cocktail party a few weeks later and someone brings up naked mole rats. And you think, ooh, what is that? And then they tell you naked mole rats have no eyes and they live underground and they never come above ground. And the next thing you know, you're obsessing about naked mole rats. And that's all you think about. And you have to look it up. And then you ask ChatGPT about it. How does the naked mole rat live? And blah, 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 blah. That's your obsession. And so what Jim Shepard said was that when he was crafting his story, The Queen of Bad Influences, he became obsessed with the Lusitania. And he also started thinking about what life would have been like for women in pre-Edwardian England. And for whatever reason, he started looking up everything about those two subjects. And the next thing he knew, he was writing the story. And I can't remember right now because, of course, I'd love to have a brain like Andre Dubus. Is he junior or the third or whatever? I don't know what his name is even. But anyway, the great short story writer and the writer of The House of Sand and Fog, he can just bring up these quotes and he always knows who said it. I never know who said anything. Even when I write it down, I sometimes can't figure out who said it. So I'm just going to say the advice. And then if I know, I'll attribute it to someone. And if I've forgotten, I can't help you there. My brain just doesn't work like that. But anyway, I think a lot of writers have mentioned to me about leaning into obsessions. And I think that when I was in graduate school, that was something that the writer Jenny Offel also said, the writer of Department of Speculations. She also, I think she mentioned that she goes into the library and she just wanders and she just picks books out and sees what snags her attention. And that's one of her processes. It's like a divination. You just go in and it's which book do you pick out, which tarot card, and that means something. And I think that's a fun process too. Okay, so another one that I was really interested in was Molly Dektar. She wrote the story that we talked about, The Bed and Breakfast. And she mentioned that she likes to keep a light grasp on her work. In the early stages, this was hard for her because she was just following the story and the characters, and she didn't know why she was writing it. I guess this is her process for all of her stories. She doesn't know why she's writing something, and then she might get to 4,000 words and still feel like she has no idea what the story's about. And she said that's the part that a lot of people have a hard time with when they're crafting. They don't want to be wasting their time. But she likes to allow for the strangeness. And so she tries really hard not to tie the meaning down or try to explain things too early. Instead, she just lets the story sit and then she puts it away, and sometimes for a very long period of time. And then she comes back to it so that she can react to her work as if she's just a reader happening upon it. And several other writers also describe this process of dreaming at a deeper level than a daydream. where you're building a structure around images and giving the reader instructions on how to imagine things. And many have mentioned that for the work to be decent, it must be beyond the writer. It must be surprising to the writer as well. And this sort of makes me think about what Pemi Aguda said, that she follows the magic and the mystery of her first draft. When she understands the ending, then she can go back and dial up the imagery throughout the story and create foreshadowing. And that's actually something that Molly Dector also mentioned too, that she'll go back through the story and she'll say, oh, like I mentioned the pink slip here, maybe I should bring it back later or put it in beforehand. And I think Molly Dector called this lighting the fuses before the bombs go off. So if the gelato is going to be featured in a critical scene at the end of the story, you might want to bring in someone going to get gelato earlier in the story. So gelato just doesn't come out of nowhere. But that's for both Molly Dector and for Pemi Aguda. It seems like that's part of the revision process. And another thing that I didn't write down here, but I'm now thinking about it because I thought a lot about this when I was talking to Pemi Aguda about her story Manifest, because it is a very violent story. And I really thought about how much courage she had to have to allow the writer or allow the protagonist to do what the protagonist does in the story. And I won't give much away, but at one point the protagonist kills a little puppy. I know, and that bothers a lot of people more than later when the protagonist does worse things. But for some reason, the puppy is the thing she hears about more than anything. But anyway, I loved the fact that she allowed her imagination to go there. I just find it really hard as a writer to make my characters do terrible things. I just think, oh my God, they're going to think it's me, that I'm doing that. I don't know. You should read Manifest. I can't really explain it. But once you read her story Manifest, you'll know what I'm talking about. So she really goes there. So, and that makes me think of something that David Mean said about, he was saying, like, you know how we always hear about desire and allowing your protagonist to desire things. And we think, well, if I just write this down, if I just plot this out, this is my character's desire, and then I'm going to put up an obstacle, and then maybe another obstacle, and maybe he'll almost get it, and then another obstacle, and then there's my story. He either gets it at the end or he doesn't. But David Mean said you should think about desires on a deeper level, in that you have to think about your character as a person who is at a certain stage of their life in time. Of course, this may not be David Means. I think it is David Means. Okay, but just don't hold me to it because I'm worried now that I got that wrong. But who cares? This advice is really good. He said, I hope he said, think about your character as a 17-year-old kid. And the 17-year-old kid, more than anything, wants these great skateboarding shoes. And then, okay, a beginning writer might say, okay, I know he wants the skateboarding shoes. I'm going to give him some obstacles. Maybe he'll get them, maybe he won't. But David Mean said you have to actually understand a little bit more about it's the framework of the desire. Sometimes we want things that are bad for us or that we're ashamed of. And he said that fiction has to reflect the uncertainty and the fragility of the characters in that moment. So it's not just that he wants the skateboarding shoes, but he wants the skateboarding shoes because that'll make him look cool. And there's a girl that he's always skateboarding with, and he really likes her. And if he has these shoes, he feels like she'll like him more, or whatever. So there's a whole host of reasons why the character wants something. And a lot of times people don't spend enough time thinking about why is that the main desire of this character? And what does it say about the character that this is what they desire? Okay, another piece of advice, which I thought was interesting. So if you've read Erica Krause's Save Me Stranger, like her collection of short stories, which just won the Joyce Carol Oates Award, very well deserved. In that collection, she writes from so many different points of view, so many different places in the world, Japan, Thailand, first person, third person, old people, young people, many different perspectives, even one from the coldest place on earth. And so when she was on the podcast, she was on with Caitlin Horrocks, and Caitlin said, or maybe I said, who knows, one of us, I'm sure we both wanted to know how you give yourself permission to write from so many different perspectives about so many different subjects, so many different time periods. And she was funny because she said that, she just has always had this feeling that she might die at any moment and that no one is actually going to read it, which I think are two good things to keep in mind, even if that is not naturally what you would always be thinking. It is true. We could die at any moment. Why shouldn't you try something different? And then I love the fact that no one is ever going to read it because, of course, now it's one of the most celebrated short story collections out there. But she didn't know that at the time. But then she said the other thing that motivates her is she is one of those people who, if she's driving the same way to work 2 days in a row, she's bored and she starts thinking like, why am I even alive? This is so boring. So she's almost allergic to doing the same thing twice. And another person who said the same thing, but in different languages, Lee Newman, I was talking to her about her story, An Extravaganza in 2 Acts, which is a historical short story. And then she also has a wide range of short stories in her collection. And she said that she always challenges herself to do the literary equivalent of a cartwheel, and then a round off, and then a flip. And so she's always wanting to switch between the baby's perspective and an old woman's perspective, or blending a fantastical element with realism. And her goal is also not to do what she's ever done before. Okay, and this one is just a little bit off the short story itself, but I thought it was a good thing to keep in mind. Maura Stanton was on, and she was talking about her book, School for Robots. And she's one who switches between poetry and fiction, which a lot of times people are hesitant to do. And she said that she's always framed her writing life around that switch back and forth between poetry and fiction, which made me feel good because I write poetry as well. And she would write poetry during the school year when she was teaching, and she was teaching poetry. So it made sense. And then fiction in the summer when she had more time. I think that's it for now. I'm going to pull out some more advice. If you like this, let me know, and I'll maybe try and do this again. That's only the most recent podcast. So I only took that advice from about 6 podcasts, and I think we've got 50 some. So I've got more advice to give. If you would like to hear it, let me know. Thanks. Bye.